And our second main topic today gets submitted to us by Camel438, who writes, there was a CNBC article stating that Discovery is trying to position itself to sell DC Comics to either Disney, Netflix, or Apple. By the way, that is not at all what it said in the CNBC article. Let's just be clear. That is not at all what is said in the CNBC article. Anyway, it's trying to sell it's trying to sell DC Comics to either Disney, Netflix, or Apple after their merger with Warner Media. What do you think are the advantages and disadvantages of each company acquiring DC? Which company would you prefer by DC? First time question asker. Love the show. Thank you so much for sending that in, Camel. And yeah, listen, this kind of took off yesterday. And I was like, what the hell's going on? So I start seeing flying all over the place. I'm getting all these tweets from people and seeing a lot of people messaging in about, John, did you see that Disney's going to try to buy DC Comics? And I'm like, where the hell did something like that come from? And yeah, you could see it on places like We Got This Covered is on there. And yes, on Cosmic Book News, DC, WB could be. And so people are reading this and thinking, oh my God, Disney is trying to take over, they're not. They're not. Okay, so where is all this coming from? Here's where this is coming from. This is coming from a story that was indeed on CNBC, but some people like Cosmic Book News and others took it and totally put a different layer of altered reality over top of it and turned it into a story when there's nothing there. So here's the thing. CNBC did write an article about a financial matter involved in the Discovery takeover of Warner Media. AT&T is selling off Warner Media to Discovery. Discovery's going to merge in that Warner Media thing. They're going to create a new company. All right. Here's what was in CNBC that got everybody all riled up. And it's a rather small thing buried in the article. John Malone agreed to turn in those shares. Now, John Malone, by the way, is just to give a little bit of context. John Malone is a major shareholder in Discovery, but he's got these special kind of shares that gives him increased voting rights when it comes to votes pertaining to the direction of Discovery and the company, right? So they're like these ultra shares, if you will, that gives him, like, even though he doesn't own 25% of the shares of Discovery, he has over 25% of the voting rights when it comes to Discovery, okay? I know that sounds a little confusing, but just John Malone guy has got a lot of the shares and a lot of the voting rights, even though he doesn't have tons of the shares. But Malone agreed to turn in those shares for common equity, just regular shares, because he wanted to give a combined Warner Discovery flexibility to possibly sell itself in the future. Most likely to deep-pocketed technology companies like Amazon or Apple or another media behemoth like Disney, according to a person familiar with the matter. Okay, listen. This is exactly what is being said here. This guy who holds a disproportionate amount of voting power in the shares, that makes the company a little bit less attractive, and it makes the company less flexible because it means too much power in this overall owned company is centered in one guy. This guy has agreed to turn in those shares for more equity shares. So he's actually going to make money out of this. All right. By turning, because he only owns 5% of the shares, he's now going to have an increased amount of shares that he owns, but less voting rights than he currently did. He swapped out one set of shares for another. Now, one of the reasons buried in this CNBC article is because one of the things that this does is it makes the new company more flexible, that possibly, in the future, if they wanted to sell off, it makes it a much more attractive acquisition later on because you don't have this big possible problem with one person having so much of the voting leverage in a company. That's all it said. And then it said, if it were to sell, because Rob, anything like this to sell would probably sell for the $60 to $70 billion range. All right. $60 to $70 billion is what this combined company may sell for in the future. So they would want to make sure that's all cleared out. So with that guy not having those shares, the company's going to be easier to run. It makes the company far more flexible. And in the future, as CNBC uses the word possibly, they could possibly sell it future if they want to. Somehow, Rob, certain outlets took that information and spun it into, and I have no idea how we got to this, DC Comics is up for sale and Disney is looking to buy DC Comics. That is completely untrue. That is completely untrue. That is not the case. That's not happening. First of all, and some people are saying, oh yeah, DC is going to sell, Warner Media is going to sell off DC before Discovery acquires them. You can't legally do that. Now that you've drafted a purchase agreement, you can't start selling off your assets before the buyer comes in and buys it. So number one, that can't even happen. Number two, here's the thing. Some people are saying now, running around saying, well, but now Disney can buy them. I guarantee you Disney is not going to be buying this new Discover Warner Media. And there's three reasons why, Rob. There's three reasons why. I should open up the Campea Classroom, but I don't have it open right now. But there's three reasons why there is no damn chance that Disney is about to buy Warner Media. Number one, Discovery is putting this deal together because they believe that each of these pieces of this puzzle, the Warner Media pieces and the Discovery pieces, are going to make a formidable online streaming presence that will compete, they believe, with the likes of Netflix and Disney Plus and all that kind of stuff. They're putting this thing together to make a big, successful company. Even though all companies will be open to the idea, like in the future, yeah, maybe we want to sell it off and we can get huge profits and stuff like that. But that's a separate thing. They're putting this thing together to make a winning team. Reason number two that you're not going to see Disney acquire Warner Media is the fact that everybody has seemed to have forgotten that Disney is still and will be for the next decade, Rob, recovering from and recouping not only from the COVID pandemic crisis, but everybody forgets they just spent $73 billion, half of their net worth, Rob. Half of their net worth Disney spent to buy Fox. They're in no position right now to make a massive capital acquisition like another 50 to 60 to $70 billion. They just don't have the room for it. Not to mention they're just coming off of the pandemic. So they're in decent shape, but they're in no position to make another $60 million acquisition. So there's that. But the third reason that this would never happen is because I don't care if the current government is Republican, Democrat, doesn't matter. There is no way in hell the government would approve that merger. Because it's one thing for a Discovery to merge in with the Warner Media. It's one thing for Paramount to absorb some smaller company. There is no way the government government board on this would ever sign off on Disney and Warner merging. These are just too big of the two biggest powerhouses in the industry. They would definitely rule that as being monopolistic, and there's no way it would be approved. So number one, Discovery is not looking to sell Warner Media. They got it to make a winning team. They want to have flexibility. Maybe they sell in the future, but for now, that's not the plan. Number two, Disney is not in the financial position to do this. Number one, because of COVID, but number two, they're still dealing with the fact that they spent $73 billion to buy Fox, and everybody just thinks Disney has limitless money. They don't. But number three, even if by some weird thing, a magic fairy leprechaun came to Bob Chapek in his sleep and crapped out $70 billion of leprechaun gold onto his bed that he could then use to buy Discovery Warner, the government no way in hell would approve such a merger because it's just too monopolistic. So no, DC Comics is not for sale to Disney. No, Disney is not being positioned to buy Warner Media right now. No. So yeah, you can just take all that and throw it away. I only bring it up because I got so many messages from people asking about it, but it is not what is happening. So you can just put that to bed. And Rob, that doesn't mean it's impossible that somewhere down the line, an Amazon who has literally 10 times the money that Disney does, that Amazon may not say, hey, we'll make you an offer for overpriced. We'll make you an offer for 80 billion or something along those lines. Maybe that happens in a few years after Discovery Warner gets on its feet and really starts operating and succeeding. Because Rob, all these people at Discovery do is succeed. Everything they've ever done just succeeds. And I have no reason to believe that they won't do the same thing with Warner Media under their belts. But as of right now, all this talk you see going around that Disney's getting ready to buy Warner Media, DC Comics is for sale, it's all bullshit. Just ignore it. Anyway, Rob, you saw this story. What's the first stuff that comes to your mind?
Well, I mean, you laid out the business reasons why something like this isn't going to happen. But so, you know, you a company's not going to sell the underlying IP rights to a giant library of material, whether it's animated, whether it's. Do you think Warner Brothers is going to give up everything from Batman the animated series to Superman the movie to Christopher Nolan's Batman film? Like, no. Why would they do that? That's like it's a crown jewel in their catalog of material, and it's one of the things that gives Warner Brothers value forever. And there's no way that some company's going to let that go, and it makes no sense at all. And I don't see why anybody would think that's true.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine? This is what's being proposed, that Discovery just spent 43 or is about to spend $43 billion to buy Warner Media. Oh, but not their most valuable asset. Not the library and not the future treading, IP that is all of DC's stuff. It's just no. It just makes no sense.
No, I mean, and look at what they've even got in production.
Yeah.
It's just it's an odd thing to say. I mean, I get it. I really do get tired of a lot of these sites that literally they conjure up stories out of thin air, hoping that 1 out of 100 will trend. And I understand they get clickbait and all that, but it really I find disinformation of this kind rather distasteful.
Well, there is that. Anyway, guys, question is for you. What do you think about all that? You see these things running rampant around. It's not true at all. Anyway, guys, question is, what did you think about it? Jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Okay, guys.